Kansas is a U.S. state located in the Midwestern United States. It is named after the Kansas Native American tribe, which inhabited the area. The tribe's name is often said to mean, "people of the wind," or "people of the south wind," although this was probably not the term's original meaning. Residents of Kansas are called Kansans. For thousands of years, what is now Kansas was home to numerous and diverse Native American tribes. Tribes in the eastern part of the state generally lived in villages along the river valleys. Tribes in the western part of the state were semi-nomadic and hunted large herds of bison. Kansas was first settled by European Americans in the 1830s, but the pace of settlement accelerated in the 1850s. In the midst of political wars over the slavery issue, when it was officially opened to settlement by the U.S. government in 1854, abolitionist free-staters from New England and pro-slavery settlers from neighboring Missouri rushed to the territory to determine whether Kansas would become a free state or a slave state. Thus, the area was a hotbed of violence and chaos in its early days as these forces collided, and was known as Bleeding Kansas. The abolitionists eventually prevailed, and on January 29, 1861, Kansas entered the Union as a free state. After the Civil War, the population of Kansas grew rapidly when waves of immigrants turned the prairie into farmland. Today, Kansas is one of the most productive agricultural states, producing high yields of wheat, corn, sorghum, and soybeans. Kansas is the 15th most extensive and the 34th most populous of the 50 United States. History. For millennia, the land that is currently Kansas was inhabited by Native Americans. The first European to set foot in present-day Kansas was Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, who explored the area in 1541. In 1803, most of modern Kansas was secured by the United States as part of the Louisiana Purchase. Southwest Kansas, however, was still a part of Spain, Mexico and the Republic of Texas until the conclusion of the Mexican-American War in 1848. From 1812 to 1821, Kansas was part of the Missouri Territory. The Santa Fe Trail traversed Kansas from 1821 to 1880, transporting manufactured goods from Missouri and silver and furs from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Wagon ruts from the trail are still visible in the prairie today. In 1827, Fort Leavenworth became the first permanent settlement of white Americans in the future state. The Kansas-Nebraska Act became law on May 30, 1854, establishing the U.S. territories of Nebraska and Kansas, and opening the area to broader settlement by whites. Kansas Territory stretched all the way to the Continental Divide and included the sites of present-day Denver, Colorado Springs, and Pueblo. Missouri and Arkansas sent settlers into Kansas all along its eastern border. These settlers attempted to sway votes in favor of slavery. The secondary settlement of Americans in Kansas Territory were abolitionists from Massachusetts and other free-staters, who attempted to stop the spread of slavery from neighboring Missouri. Directly presaging the American Civil War, these forces collided, entering into skirmishes that earned the territory the name of Bleeding Kansas. Kansas was admitted to the United States as a free state on January 29, 1861, making it the 34th state to enter the Union. By that time the violence in Kansas had largely subsided, but during the Civil War, on August 21, 1863, William Quantrill led several hundred men on a raid into Lawrence, destroying much of the city and killing nearly 200 people. He was roundly condemned by both the conventional Confederate military and the partisan Rangers commissioned by the Missouri legislature. His application to that body for a commission was flatly rejected due to his pre-war criminal record. After the Civil War, many veterans constructed homesteads in Kansas. Many African Americans also looked to Kansas as the land of John Brown, and, led by freedmen like Benjamin Pap Singleton, began establishing black colonies in the state. leaving southern states in the late 1870s because of increasing discrimination. They became known as exodusters. At the same time, the Chisholm Trail was opened and the Wild West era commenced in Kansas. Wild Bill Hickok was a deputy marshal at Fort Riley and a marshal at Hays and Abilene. Dodge City was another wild cowboy town, and both Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp worked as lawmen in the town. In 1 year alone, 8 million head of cattle from Texas boarded trains in Dodge City bound for the east, earning Dodge the nickname Queen of the Cowtowns, in response to demands of Methodists and other evangelical Protestants. In 1881, Kansas became the first U.S. state to adopt a constitutional amendment prohibiting all alcoholic beverages, which was only repealed in 1948. Geography. Kansas is bordered by Nebraska on the north, Missouri on the east, Oklahoma on the south, and Colorado on the west. The state is divided into 105 counties with 628 cities, and is located equidistant from the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. The geographic center of the 48 contiguous states is located in Smith County near Lebanon. Until 1989, the Meads Ranch Triangulation Station in Osborne County was the geodetic center of North America, the central reference point for all maps of North America. The geographic center of Kansas is located in Barton County. Geology. Kansas is underlain by a sequence of horizontal to gently westward dipping sedimentary rocks. A sequence of Mississippian, Pennsylvanian and Permian rocks outcrop in the eastern and southern part of the state. The western half of the state has exposures of Cretaceous through Tertiary sediments, the latter derived from the erosion of the uplifted Rocky Mountains to the west. These are underlain by older Paleozoic and Mesozoic sediments which correlate well with the outcrops to the east. The northeastern corner of the state was subjected to glaciation in the Pleistocene and is covered by glacial drift and loess. Topography. The western two-thirds of the state, lying in the Great Central Plain of the United States, has a generally flat or undulating surface, while the eastern third has many hills and forests. The land gradually rises from east to west. Its altitude ranges from 684 feet along the Verdigris River at Coffeyville in Montgomery County, to 4,039 feet at Mount Sunflower, 1/2 mile from the Colorado border, in Wallace County. It is a popular belief that Kansas is the flattest state in the nation, reinforced by a well-known 2003 tongue-in-cheek study stating that Kansas was indeed flatter than a pancake. This has since been called into question, with most scientists ranking Kansas somewhere between 20th and 30th flattest state, depending on measurement method. Its average elevation is 2,000 feet, higher than that of 36 states. Rivers. Nearly 75 miles of the state's northeastern boundary is defined by the Missouri River. The Kansas River, formed by the junction of the Smoky Hill and Republican Rivers at appropriately named Junction City, joins the Missouri River at Kansas City, after a course of 170 miles across the northeastern part of the state. The Arkansas River, rising in Colorado, flows with a bending course for nearly 500 miles across the western and southern parts of the state. With its tributaries, it forms the southern drainage system of the state. Kansas or other rivers are the Saline and Solomon Rivers, tributaries of the Smoky Hill River, the Big Blue, Delaware, and Wakarusa, which flow into the Kansas River, and the Mare des Cygnes, a tributary of the Missouri River. Spring River is located between Riverton, Kansas, and Baxter Springs, Kansas. National parks and historic sites. Areas under the protection of the National Park Service include Brown v. Board of Education National Historic Site in Topeka, California, National Historic Trail, Fort Land National Historic Site in Land, Fort Scott National Historic Site, Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail, Nicodemus National Historic Site at Nicodemus, Oregon National Historic Trail, Pony Express National Historic Trail, Santa Fe National Historic Trail, Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve near Strong City. Climate. According to the Köppen climate classification, the climate of Kansas can be characterized in terms of three types. It has humid continental, semi-arid steppe, and humid subtropical. The eastern two-thirds of the state has a humid continental climate, with cool to cold winters and hot, often humid summers. Most of the precipitation falls in the summer and spring. The western third of the state, from roughly the U.S. Route 281 corridor westward, has a semi-arid steppe climate. Summers are hot, often very hot, and generally less humid. Winters are highly changeable between warm and very cold. The western region receives an average of about 16 inches of precipitation per year. Chinook winds in the winter can warm western Kansas all the way into the 80 degrees Fahrenheit range. The far south central and southeastern reaches of the state have a humid subtropical climate with hot, humid summers, milder winters and more precipitation than elsewhere in Kansas. Although not strictly falling in all of the zones, some features of all three climates can be found in most of the state, with droughts and changeable weather between dry and humid not uncommon, and both warm and cold spells in the winter. Precipitation ranges from about 47 inches annually in the southeast corner of the state, to about 16 inches in the southwest. Snowfall ranges from around 5 inches in the fringes of the south, to 35 inches in the far northwest. Frost-free days range from more than 200 days in the south, to 130 days in the northwest. Thus, Kansas is the 9th or 10th sunniest state in the country, depending on the source. Western Kansas is as sunny as California and Arizona. Kansas is prone to severe weather, especially in the spring and early summer. Despite the frequent sunshine throughout much of the state, due to its location at a climatic boundary prone to intrusions of multiple air masses, the state is vulnerable to strong and severe thunderstorms. Some of these storms become supercell thunderstorms. These can spawn tornadoes, occasionally of EF3 strength or higher. Kansas averages over 50 tornadoes annually. Severe thunderstorms sometimes drop very large hail over Kansas, as well as bringing flash flooding and damaging straight-line winds. According to NOAA, the all-time highest temperature recorded in Kansas is on July 24, 1936, near Alton, and the all-time low is -40 degrees Fahrenheit on February 13, 1905, near Lebanon. Kansas's record high of 121 degrees Fahrenheit ties with North Dakota for the 5th highest record high in an American state, behind California, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico.